Hey YouTubers! So guys, if you've been a fan of my Saw related content for however long, you know that this has been my dream project and I wanted to get this done months ago, but I cannot get it done. I mean, artistically, creatively, it's just never there, and I never want to jump on this because I really feel like I want to bring the best thing to you guys. But now that we're less than a week away from Jigsaw, everyone get excited, hashtag becoming Jigsaw in the comment section below. I thought, heck, why not just kind of put everything on the table and give you guys the stuff that I've been thinking about for a really long time. Now, all that is to say that this might not be the best iteration or best fan reinterpretation of Saw the Final Chapter, Saw 3D, Saw 7, whatever we're going to call it here, but this is the way I would have really enjoyed it actually playing out. And the one thing I really want to say before I get started here is that I've done a retrospective series on the entirety of the Saw franchise so far, the first 7 films. Me and my guest talked in great detail about the trials and tribulations, the good, the bad, and the ugly throughout all 7 films. And the very last part of a 3-part series was Saw 7, Saw the Final Chapter, Saw 3D. And even though Saw 3D wasn't necessarily the best one in the entire series, I do believe that it's worth watching, it is worth enjoying, and it does have its really good moments. You cannot place the blame for that movie on anyone's shoulders because it was just a culmination of so many different things that ended up making that movie what it was. So none of this rewrite, none of this reimagining is really aimed at trying to place blame on the writers or the directors or the actors or anyone else. This is just me as a fan with 7 years of hindsight and thinking about what this movie could potentially have been and how it could have been a satisfying conclusion to the entire series that I really wanted to put it out there. So with that being said, I hope everyone really enjoys this interpretation. Like always, please make sure to go down to the comment section below and share your thoughts and opinions on not only my ideas, but also give me your reinterpretation of what you would like to see from Saw 7. But anyway, with that being said, let's get into it. So with any good Saw film, you really need to start with some kind of extravagant, huge trap. And unlike all the other sequels, I feel like instead of going bigger, considering the fact that this is the final chapter in this fan interpretation that I'm coming up with, I feel like although it needs to be big for the audience, it really kind of needs to draw back and be a little bit more personalized. And honestly, I do think you need to kind of build tension and show exactly where we're going with the traps and how we're setting up the movie, and also making it known that nobody in the entire series, because this is the final chapter, is anywhere off limits. Everyone and anyone can die at any given point. You start off in a dark room resembling very closely the first trap with Amanda and the bear trap from the very first film. And the woman in the chair is none other than Pamela Jenkins from Saw 5 and 6, and now this last film in particular. Strapped to her face is the reverse bear trap, and as she wakes up, the lights go on and it's a very sterile, un-Saw-like room. Cameras are all around her with a television in front that pops on. We see the Billy puppet front and center as he explains to her that this particular trap is being streamed on the internet for anyone and everyone to see at any given point. She's starting to freak out as the clock ticks down and people from all across the world are tuning in online to see the death of Pamela Jenkins on air, completely live. But the real kicker is that she has absolutely no way of escaping. This, like the original film, is our window into what the reverse bear trap looks like when it actually does go off. Instead of actually killing Jill, we are now killing Pamela Jenkins in front of a live audience. So ipso facto, basically the public trap of this, the final chapter. And personally, I feel like this is definitely okay to do, considering the fact that linearly, or at least in the timeline, these events probably took place during 2007 after the previous films, and considering the fact that in our real world application, we got the Untraceable movie in 2008 that basically dealt with an entire concept based on this little plot point of mine, I feel like it would have worked for that particular time period. One of the things that we do see in this scene is that the police officers, in fact, our main police officers, along with Officer Fisk, are actually watching the footage, and everyone is starting to freak out. And after Pamela Jenkins dies, we go straight into the last scene from SAW VI, but a little bit different than actually how it played out. Instead of staying with Hoffman in the room after Jill leaves, we see Jill leave, walk down the hallway as she rips off the necklace that John gave her and throws it to the side. This to me symbolizes that the key John gave her back in SAW VI was not only her opening method of the box, but also the very key that Hoffman would have needed to actually take himself out of the bear trap, indicating that Jill actually broke the rules and she wasn't allowing Hoffman to survive. She was actually executing him. The very fact that he does survive at the end of the game is just an indication of how much of a badass he actually is and how we will actually see him throughout the remainder of the film. So as Jill rounds the corner and leaves, we get to see the hallway shot that we saw at the very end of SAW VI, and we go straight into the ending of SAW VI with Hoffman busting the glass and allowing the bear trap enough time to open so it doesn't kill him, pulling himself away and being disfigured the way he was. Before we cut away though, he crawls over and with his bloody hand pockets the Amanda letter as he desperately and gargly calls for help on his radio. From there, we go straight into the title card sequence, SAW VII, the final chapter. And as we leave the title sequence, we come into a very familiar looking party, the party from SAW VI, where we saw William Easton talking to John Kramer as they met for the first time. But in this iteration, we see Britt from SAW V talking to Art Blank from SAW IV about the Marshford Group's attempts to acquisition the property bought by John Kramer and Art Blank and their attempt to create affordable living houses for low-income families. Of course, as she's talking to them, John Kramer comes up and they have this philosophical debate on what's right and what's wrong and how you need to take care of the people less fortunate. In typical John fashion, he leaves Britt with something morally ambiguous to think about as he leaves with Art as they join the party. And as she stands there alone, we hear a fresh new voiceover from the series talking to her as if she was somewhere else. From there, we cut into an interrogation room as she is talking with the fresh new FBI agents after the death of Erickson and Perez from SAW VI. Now, instead of what happened in SAW 3D, we have these two particular officers believing that Strom is still involved with this and he is in cahoots with Jill Tuck based off the events of SAW VI. And from this, they definitely mention that Hoffman, who is still a decorated police officer, has been healing in the hospital after his events in SAW VI. From there, we cut to Hoffman lying in a hospital bed with his face still bandaged up from the injuries that he received at the end of SAW VI. In his hands, he's holding the blood-splattered letter that he pocketed at the beginning of the film as we jump to the sick room back from SAW 3 and 4. From there, we see Hoffman approach John in the sick bed as he informs John that the police have identified Amanda as being a part of the Jigsaw philosophy and part of his apprenticeship. From there, we get a quick cut of Hoffman pocketing a small chain in his coat pocket after Troy's trap in this classroom in SAW 3. Hoffman then tells John that they found Amanda's prints at Detective Carey's house after she was reported missing, and they then connected the dots. He argues with John about how much of a liability Amanda is and that she needs to be reined in if they were going to continue the games further. But John is able to calm Hoffman down as he explains that Amanda is still being tested before she's fully ready to continue his legacy. In his hands, we see John holding Amanda's envelope. From there, we cut back to Hoffman's hospital room as Detective Fisk enters and the two share a very friendly exchange about the currentness of the case and whether or not Hoffman is getting better. Fisk tells him that two new FBI agents have taken over for the case after the unexpected death of Erickson and Perez at the end of SAW 6. And after commending Hoffman for his bravery and dedication to the case, he informs him that he has then been taken off the case based off of his own personal involvement and his closeness to all things Jigsaw. Before Fisk leaves the hospital room, he hands Hoffman a brochure about a newly formed survival group specifically for Jigsaw victims. He tells Hoffman that this would be a really good way for him to move on with not being a part of the case and after having survived so much atrocities in the wake of Jigsaw. From there, Fisk leaves and Hoffman hyper-focuses on the brochure itself. We then cut to the survivor group, much like the original film, where we get to see many of the people that we've seen throughout the entire films reliving a lot of their traps. And as an aside going further, as a fan of this series, I do like the traps, but they're never my main focus. But with that being said, this isn't a Saw film without traps, so they need to have a main part. And with the Jigsaw Survivor Group, I believe it's a great opportunity to show a lot of traps, have a lot of gore and bloodshed, without actually having to focus too heavily away from the story or introducing too many main characters in order to get the full scope of everything that's going on. This movie is very much about exploring the story and exploring the characters that we already know and having a full conclusion to the story that's been built up for the last 6 films. From there, we focus on the Jigsaw Survivor Group, where we focus on a lot of the people from the last 6 Saw films who survived their traps, describing not only how they got into those traps, but also what they had to go through. This allows us a really brief synopsis on not only where the story has been, but also a nice recap of all the traps for all the gore heads who go in to see these films in the first place. And as we go around the circle, we focus on Hoffman, listening to all these people, and when it's finally his turn to actually talk, he gets up and leaves in frustration as he's asked why he's leaving, and he actually says that nobody has actually learned their lesson from what Jigsaw was trying to teach them, and he won't be a part of this particular group. From there, we jump back to the police station with Hoffman under the disguise of trying to pack up his stuff and take his sabbatical. He's trying to actually get in touch with the new FBI agents and trying to get an idea of where the Jigsaw investigation is going. Of course, this really works because the 2 FBI agents on top of this are really interested in not only his opinion, but are also illustrated to be somewhat dumb and cocky individuals because obviously, as the last film, these people are not going to be the ones to bring down Jigsaw or Hoffman. That's not the way that this is going, so we're just going to work with these people being a little bit more of a comic relief character, the same way that Gibson was in the last one. From there, we see Hoffman watching behind the two-way glass mirror as one of the new FBI agents questions Pamela Jenkins about what she knows about the Jigsaw case. One of the things she does mention is the fact that she found a letter between Hoffman and Amanda, although she doesn't necessarily know who it was actually from, concerning the fact of John's relationship with Amanda concerning his unborn baby Gideon. Obviously, the FBI agents are a little bit new to this case, but they're kind of concerned with the fact that they weren't actually able to find this letter, considering the fact that she tells them that it was found at the same Gideon warehouse crime scene from Saw III and IV. From here, we see a flashback of Hoffman erasing the files of any public information about the letter and taking the original for himself. Eventually, the FBI agents let Pamela Jenkins go, but tell her to keep in touch just in case they have any other questions. Hoffman is visually frustrated by this information, especially as the FBI agents tell him that they will be in contact if they need anything else from him, but they don't need him at this particular time. From there, we cut to Hoffman's hideout, where we see an arrangement of all things Jigsaw. Billy puppets, unused traps, even used traps, designs for traps, and almost anything else. Hoffman rummages around his files until he brings out a familiar-looking envelope. Amanda's envelope from Saw III. He opens up the envelope and pours the contents onto a nearby table where we see a candid shot of an old man. Hoffman then picks up the photo and walks off screen. We then cut to the bar where we see an elderly man with a nice suit on, drinking and having a good time with his friends. There's a news report on the television that indicates that several weeks have gone by since the last time we saw Hoffman planning out the traps, and they're talking about the gruesome murder of Pamela Jenkins, broadcast online for everyone to see, and the reintroduction of the Jigsaw Killer with Jill Tuck and Peter Strom as the main suspects by the FBI. As the night wears on, we see the old man drunkenly stumble outside of the bar before he's assaulted by Hoffman wearing the pig mask. And then we have the old man waking up and having to go through his traps. And before I go any further, I just want to say I'm not good at making traps in my head. They were never my biggest focus, like I said earlier. So I'm going to allow everyone in the comment section below to share your thoughts and opinions on what type of traps that this guy has to go through. The only things I will say about this, and I feel the big kicker of this particular set of traps is not like any other Jigsaw traps or any other games. It's very much supposed to feel like it's stitched together from various pieces and parts of one of John's original traps or multiple John's original traps, not only symbolizing how much Hoffman has to put together on the spot, but at the same time reflecting what his face now looks like, all kind of mutilated and botched up. And that's where I think we have a whole lot of fun in this film, because everyone this guy is pitted against are survivors from other Jigsaw traps from other films. Simone, Alec, Emily, Tara, Abby, and almost everyone else. Even Daniel Matthews, for everyone who's really excited to see other people who have survived throughout the entire series. You just find clever ways to bring them back to not necessarily show their aging. I think that would be pretty awesome. And that's where I think we have a really interesting audible cue in order to give us an idea of just who this guy is and his variety on John's legacy. Because unlike everyone else who's going through traps and listening to tapes during this nightmare of a trap that just kind of brings together everyone from the entire franchise, the tapes that this guy has to listen to are very distinctly John's voice. There's no mechanicalness to it. There's nothing else. It's literally John speaking to this man as if he knows him or he's trying to get under his skin. Everyone else is listening to something quickly put together, a really mechanical Jigsaw voice. And another thing I think we need to mention about the traps is that these traps are actually being broadcast online as they are happening, just like the Pamela Jenkins trap from the very beginning. This is a very public forum for Hoffman as he's trying to reel up and get the entire city panicking about everything Jigsaw. And as we go through the traps, we do realize that the old man is the president and CEO of the Marshford Group, the realty corporation that Britt worked for in SAW V. And as we went through at the beginning of this particular video, the corporation that wanted to build condos on top of Art Blank and John Kramer's housing development. But the moral conflict of his story is really focused on his family life, as we see flashbacks of him emotionally and physically abusing his wife and very young daughter. So as all the traps are going on, we jump back to the police station where everyone is still reeling from the death of Pamela Jenkins. Everyone's still trying to figure what's going on. And out of nowhere, Jill Tuck walks directly into the police station amongst all the chaos, puts her hands behind her head, kneels down on the floor until everyone realizes that she's there. And from there, she's quickly arrested and ushered into the interrogation room where they barrage her with a lot of questions that aren't really helpful in the end. Like I said, these two people are really supposed to be the comedic relief of this film. We're not supposed to believe that they're going to take down anybody. But through all of this, Jill is being very calm as she tells the FBI agents that games are now being played and they're also being streamed online. Of course, this is how they end up finding it, and a lot of people start focusing on the traps instead of Jill Tuck. And when everyone finally calms down from that, they go back to Jill as she tells them that Hoffman is actually the one playing these games and that Strom has been dead for months. Of course, they don't believe her at first, but she does show them a lot of evidence that makes them believe her, including a taped conversation between Hoffman and Jill in her clinic in SAW VI. Eventually, they come to Jill's side and ask her why she's turning herself in after eluding capture for so long. She believed that Hoffman wasn't capable of something quite like this, and she was afraid for her life, and this is the safest place for her. As these traps play on, the police force as well as us, the audience, realize that none of these traps are being played in the exact same place as we were led to believe at the beginning of the film. They're quite deliberately being played throughout the entire city with indicators on exactly where each game is being played live. So what this does is really stretch out the police force. They quickly go to every place that they confirm in order to save the people being trapped. This leaves the police station almost completely devoid of any police presence, thus assuring Hoffman a way to barge in and start slashing up people like he does in the original film. But the big difference here is I believe Hoffman has a completely mutilated face at this point. It's no longer bandaged, there's nothing covering it up, and it's completely Frankenstein together after his injuries at the end of SAW VI. Just like that, Hoffman works his way through the police station, killing the new FBI agent, even killing Detective Fisk until he eventually kills Jill Tuck, until he escapes in order to leave the place entirely. From there, we jump back to the man playing in the main trap. As he enters a dark room, the door shuts behind him and he's left in complete blackness until the TV on top of the wall comes to life, and instead of seeing Billy the Puppet or John, we actually get to see home videos of this man as he interacts with his wife and daughter that we've seen throughout the flashbacks. One of the things he repeatedly calls his daughter is Mandy. But eventually those images stop as we get to see a still image of his wife setting up the camera in a very strategic spot. Right before her husband walks into the door, the two argue and he starts physically abusing her until his daughter comes in, where he physically does the same to her and then ends up grabbing her and locking her in a closet. The woman throughout all of this is screaming, "Don't hurt my daughter, don't hurt my daughter, don't hurt Amanda." And then as he's trying to make her stop screaming, he realizes that the camera is actually filming him. He grabs the camera and throws it on the ground, but doesn't necessarily break it, as we hear the remainder of the fight take place. Eventually the television goes dead and we start to hear John's voice one last time. John tells the man that this trap has been built up to pay for the lifetime of atrocities that he is yet to be judged for, and that the only way he is able to be saved is if the person who put the trap on is willing to actually set him free from his dark prison. The kicker here is that this was Amanda's last trap in the envelope that John was trying to tell her about before Hoffman blackmailed her into killing Lynn Dinlin. And the very fact that Amanda died in SAW III means that she wasn't there to put on the trap. And this guy is locked in the same proverbial closet that Amanda has been locked in her entire life. This guy is the person who ruined Amanda's life and started her down the path to becoming a Jigsaw apprentice, and the last test that she needed to accomplish in order to make sure that she can carry on John's legacy. From this, we realize that this man is going to be stuck and never found forever. And then we get to the grand finale where we have Hoffman going back to his hideout and burning the entire place down in order to erase any evidence of him being a part of the Jigsaw philosophy or legacy. Because remember, right now, nobody besides everyone he just killed knew that he was even a part of it. Everyone is still looking for Jill Tuck and Peter Strom, and because Jill Tuck is dead, Peter Strom is now the main suspect. He got what he wanted. As he's leaving the warehouse, he trips on a tripwire and eventually looks up to someone in a pig mask who sticks him with a sedative, and before he passes out, the person in the pig mask pulls off their mask to reveal Allison Gordon. To this, Hoffman mumbles under his breath, "What the fuck?" We then cut to a bunch of flashbacks that tell us what the hell is actually going on. We start with Jill walking in and delivering a package at the end of SAW VI. As it hits the ground, we get to see it reads Dr. Gordon, but instead of Lawrence Gordon picking it up, it's Allison Gordon. In fact, she's not a doctor, she's actually a psychiatrist. We then get to see flashbacks of her meeting John Kramer and getting to understand his philosophy after he was diagnosed with cancer and after the loss of Gideon. From there, it plays out to her helping in most of all the other traps and being a direct disciple into his philosophy. It also really helps to smooth out the idea that Zepp was put in charge of actually killing Diana and Allison Gordon in the first film. If John knew that Allison was part of the game, he knew that she probably wasn't going to die at the end, and she would do her best to manipulate Zepp in order to go do what he did at the end of that film. As John said, if you're good at anticipating the human mind, you leave nothing to chance. In the end, everything plays out as the original film, but Allison is the one who actually brings Hoffman to the bathroom, locks him up, and throws away the key. Hoffman is trapped in the bathroom. Allison Gordon was a part of this the entire time. Dr. Gordon is dead, and I believe that we've smoothed up most of the loose ends from the entire franchise. But guys, tell me what you think about this idea. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hashtag Becoming Jigsaw in the comment section below. Did you like this idea? Did you hate this idea? Tell me your ideas in the comment section below. Everything, guys. It took a long time to make this, and I really hope everyone enjoyed it. But with that being said, guys, I hope everyone has a good day. It's been real.